I spent most of the weekend going frame by frame through the new trailer for Light No Fire, a new game from Halo Games. So here's what I found, and later I'll have a summary of what I think is going to be in this game, based on what they've told us so far. The first scene is clearly showing us the draw distance of the game, also the cloud coverage, and it's also a multiplayer Earth. The next scene is emphasising the fact it's a procedural Earth, and if you look at the details of those trees, you can tell it's one model type, but it's got that variation they promised in No Man's Sky. Then you've got the different types of grass. I believe there's 4 types, but with that procedural variation within them, creating that lush landscape, but with very few assets. And again, that amazing draw distance. The next scene with skeletons walking through another environment, just as varied as the other two, but this time focusing on a fantasy Earth, but there's also a lovely ruin sitting in the middle there. I suspect they're going to appear the similar way it works in No Man's Sky, with lots of different building types scattered throughout the world, as well as the ability to update things at later dates. Again, another dense environment, with a line, an unexplored world. But this time we've got that round building just off to the right, but I'll come to that round building later in the video, because it does appear several times. The next scene, we're underwater, and one of the little guys swimming turns out to be an otter. You can tell those tall pants are the same, but with slight variations. And then of course there's a sunken galleon, and then a large octopus, or could that be a kraken? Like all the other environments, underwater's quite dense as well. Like here we've got 2 types of fish and quite a lot of coral. Then we have a 3rd type of fish and more coral. There's a little bit of variety in those rock formations as well. At this point I want to draw your attention to the top left, bottom left and bottom right. Top left is probably your life bar, bottom right is your weapon or whatever you got in your hand at the time. But the bottom left one has a little whale icon that changes when you go in different environments. On the outside I believe that's a little snow icon, that might be a temperature gauge. And the central one is probably stamina, strength and possibly even magic. It's going to be a fantasy game. Now we've left the water, you'll probably notice the bottom left one has changed now, and if you look at that peak of the mountain just in the background there's a little tower there. We'll talk about that later. This image just flashes up for a second, but here you got a clear view of the cape, the backpack. To me that very much looks like a wand, and as we're in a red snowy environment, I believe that's an ice wand. In this image that flashed up, we're nice and high up so there's less trees as it would be. But you can also see 2 types of gliders, and it seems the outfits are slightly different in these characters to the other ones. In this image that flashed up, we've got our first rideable creatures, and we've got a different kind of character here, this time a bunny, and a completely different backpack, and of course, a completely different kind of environment. As we approach this small settlement, you can see the variety of the plant life. You've got this guy chopping down the tree collecting resources. You've also got a character to the left who looks like a warthog carrying a log. So wonder if that's an NPC that assists you or if it's another person. Next thing you've got a different guy carrying a log again, but you have some sort of kiln with, I think it looks like a face in the centre there, and it looks like a workbench just to the right of it with a blue top. But it's a survival game so there's probably crafting in it. But I also want to draw your attention to the 2 types of buildings. They're both mostly wood, but the building at the front, he's starting to build stone walls. Makes me think that not only do we have the build mechanic, but the kind of buildings we can build are going to get better as we progress. Then of course we've got another type of ride. I was told it looks more like a kingfisher, but I'm going to stick with hummingbird. In this still, we've got a boat with the first type of dragon. Of course we've got a badger person standing on the boat. But I also believe that we have to craft those boats. And this is not the first type of boat that you'll get to craft in the game. Like all fantasy based games, you have to have an archer, and it also looks like hunting will be part of the game. In this still, we've got some crab creatures attacking the guy in the centre, and that massive purple-eyed crab creature in the background. Of course the guy in the centre's got a sword, but it's a flaming one this time. I wonder if there's going to be different elemental type weapons. And here we've got 2 types of dragon and a blackbird. And of course the great thing is we can ride them. And if you look at the bottom right, we can use weapons while in flight. In this scene, if you look in the middle of the lake, there's some rafts. And if you look at the island, there's a raft in the shore and a little hut as well. I suspect that that's what you get when you're first starting out. So at first, when you're starting out, you can only have a little wooden cabin and a little wooden raft. And of course over time, you'll be able to build better and bigger things. That's an interesting storm effect. The detail in the little blackbird's quite nice there, but it's also showing off the mist here as well. And this is clearly an environment quite high up where you won't get much plant life. And now we're about to approach that watchtower I pointed out a lot earlier. This is to clearly show that things that you can see far in the distance, you can go to. It also demonstrates how much work they've actually put into mountains as well. And now we're approaching a building that really caught my interest the first time I saw the trailer. I'd really love to know what this floating settlement is. I wonder if it's an NPC settlement, it could well be, or is it something we can build ourselves, or maybe it's both. I hope it's both. But I do like that beacon watchtower, and it does seem to have a landing area just to the right of it. In this scene we've got the little guy warming his hands at the fire on the right. I suspect that's an NPC. And here, just to the left of the centre, got some dark glowing eye spectres. And if you look at the big statue just in the background there, he seems to be holding something. And the thing he's holding, that looks like a door at the front. And when we progress a little bit more, you can start to see a light coming out that thing he's holding. Of course his head starts to lift up and there's a few more spectres. To me, that feels like an entrance into a secret area where you have a radiant party of 4 to go exploring. Now we're in a different environment with different rideable creatures, but this time the character in the forefront has got deer-like horns, and of course we've got a variety of plant life with slight variations. Again, Halo Games showing quite clearly how much they've improved the procedural generation. This could well be the floating thing we saw earlier, but it seems bigger than that. But I do hope a lot of the elements you see here we'll also be able to build with, just like in No Man's Sky. Just like here, the rabbit at the front has a shield that also mirrors the faces in the background there. And I also notice the rabbits bowing at the side have the same armour set as the rabbit in the middle. Then there's the wise old giant, but there's a door in the background that seems to be open, with a couple of blue benches in front of him. He could be a quest giver or a trader. Then we're back on the dragon flying towards that giant sphere. Of course that's the second time it appears in this trailer, and it certainly has a lot of detail on it. I suspect there's quite a lot of them scattered throughout the world, and it has major significance to the story of this game. So what do we actually know about this game so far? Well, Halo Games has emphasised quite a few times that the planet is Earth-sized. That's right, the playable area is a 1-to-1 ratio to the planet Earth. A survival sandbox MMO, all the footage we've seen so far is in-game PC playthrough, so I think they're still working on the console versions, and let's cross our fingers and hope there's a VR version as well. We also want to make sure that we know it's going to be multiplayer, and the bases and communities that we build are persistent, they'll stay forever, well until we dismantle them probably. They also want to focus on the fact that the procedural engine has been improved greatly, and what we've seen in this trailer it does indicate that there's a lot more variety. And when it comes to the Fantasy Earth part of the game, there's one line that stands out for me, one where you're not the hero. I'm not sure if that indicates that we're not the hero in the whole story, or we actually have a choice what kind of role we play. And the last aspect, an unexplored Earth, this being a 1-to-1 ratio, how big are the oceans going to be? Think about it, imagine getting a horse and riding on the planet that we're on right now, and how long it would take you to go 100 to 200 miles. To go over 200 miles, that's going to take 7 days. So if there's going to be massive oceans, we're going to have to progress to the point where we can build galleons, so we can cross the massive oceans to find different continents, and no doubt we're going to be scattered throughout the world. I just hope I don't get spawned in the middle of something like the Pacific on a tiny wee island. But then again, if I'm spawned on the continent, I'm going to go looking for that tiny wee island. But there's one thing for certain, there's going to be an interesting year as more details are released. And yes, I know they had a bad launch with No Man's Sky, but you can't say they haven't learned a lot from the last few years. And as I've joked many a time, many of the features they brought into No Man's Sky always felt like a testing ground for something new. But as it's a small team, I feel that at launch there might be a few bugs, so I'm grateful they haven't announced a launch date yet, as that'll give them time to do some testing at least. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, hit that like and subscribe button, and the bell thingy. And of course, thank you for watching. See you all later.